abundant lives abide. Come to the place where you will find new life.
Soren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, developed an idea that in order for the rational to move to the spiritual, which is non-scientific and non-verifiable, one had to engage in what Kierkegaard called a rational leap of faith. When I read our text today, I believe that Peter in his Pentecost sermon took what I want to call a supra, S-U-P-R-A, supra-rational leap. Look at the text. Look at what he said. After he explained that the recipients of the Holy Spirit were not drunk, it was only 9 a.m. When he took as his text the 2nd chapter of Joel, where God promised to pour out his Spirit, he then begins to preach about Jesus. Charles Spurgeon, a great preacher of another generation in England, said, "Preachers, wherever you take your text, move as quickly across country as you can to Calvary." So what Peter did, he went straight to Jesus. And he said, "Men and brethren, you people of Israel, listen to me," he says. They all knew who Jesus was. He explained in verse 22 that they knew how God worked through him with miracles that they could not deny. There was the man born blind. There was the man at the pool of Bethesda. Ah, yes, there is Lazarus. There's no question about that. But then he moved from his miracles that God had done through him. And look at that explanation in verse 23. Now, God knew all of this because he was delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God. Nothing is done without God's permission. But listen to what he says at the end of verse 23. You took him. Now, just because God planned it didn't mean they didn't have a part in it. You took him and by wicked hands crucified and killed him. You know, when I think about this resurrection business and what led up to it, it's almost too much. It's a bit disturbing. It started when one man stood on his praying ground and felt the hot, wet kiss of betrayal by a friend. Now, betrayal by an enemy is not betrayal. Only a friend can betray you. The kiss of betrayal. And then all of his other followers but one left him, forsook him, left him alone. He was taken in chains to an illegal night court, which turned out to be nothing but a kangaroo court. The mob, the masses, the crowd, last Sunday, Hosanna, this Sunday, give us Barabbas, a murderer. This is too much. The religious hierarchy, Annas, you know who he was. Annas was the high priest who had become high priest in about 6 AD and ruled to 15 AD. He was removed from office by the Romans because he allowed an execution. They weren't allowed to execute. Oh, but he was a shrewd rascal. He made sure that his sons became high priest. And at the time of our text, Joseph Caiaphas, his son-in-law, was high priest. And they got together in a cruel, mean-spirited attempt to get him. These are the people that were supposed to be responsible for upholding the highest religious code. Look at them behind the scenes with their ugly, nasty conspiracy, their ugly collusion. They even suborned perjury to get Jesus. Then there's Pilate. Pontius Pilate, procurator, governor of Judea, sent there by Rome, sent there by Caesar. Look at it. Look over his head. There's the imprimatur of Rome, the screaming eagle, the Pax Romana, Roman peace, Roman justice. Justice? Justice. That which was responsible for treating everybody fairly. But the man was found innocent and then sentenced to death. And this craven coward, realizing he was in an untenable situation, called for water as if he could wash his hands. This is too much. This is tougher than my movie Scandal. The soldiers. What can we say about them? My God, you talk about torture. You talk about waterboarding. They beat him until he was unrecognizable. And they did it with sport. My father said these soldiers chafed at being assigned to this third-rate province off the beaten path of history. They hated it. But when they got their hands on a prisoner, there was no NFL, there was no baseball, there was no golf. They had themselves a ball and they beat him and they beat him. They didn't care that his back looked like ribbons. They didn't care what his face looked like. And they mocked him with that crown of thorns. They were having sport, and they put that faded garment of the Roman soldier of dress parade on him and mocked him and called him King of the Jews. They were having fun. This is too much. And now I take one more step. As if that's not enough. Hanging there. As if that's not enough. He became sin. I won't trespass on that today, because how do you... I was dealing with that oxymoronic controversy earlier when I said that if Jesus died, you've got to deal with the fact that how does life die? See, Jesus does not give life, he is life. And then he went so far as to say that he was the resurrection. How does the resurrection die? But here's the next problem. That was the problem for the earlier service. But here's the problem in this service. Here's the conundrum. Here's the rub. And she shall bring forth a son. And thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save. Stop. So then, how does salvation itself become sin? No wonder his heart ruptured on that cross. No wonder his heart burst. How do you turn salvation into sin? Would somebody tell me just how far will God go to save us? Let me tell you why people don't come running to the cross, because we've soft-soaped the cross. He died, he got up. It was more than that. God took his only begotten son. God took the crown prince of heaven. God took salvation itself. God had to turn salvation into sin in order to save us. God had to turn life into death to save us. God had to go to hell to get us out of hell. But here comes the super rational lead. All of that shall say. Well, the next verse says, but God. And I've come to tell you, the resurrection of Jesus Christ tells me this. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how dark the night is. It doesn't matter how long the road is. It doesn't matter how bad the sin. Doesn't matter who is against us. Doesn't matter what we go through. But God.